I'm covering. Robert's staying on offense. There's no reason for him to change his behavior, and he's coming close. A lot of people will say, and we're talking about an empty hand environment, and the outcome we want is to try to control this and not get knocked out. But even if I had weapon systems on and I wanted to get to those weapon systems, if Robert presses me and I just back up, I'm never getting to the stuff on my belt. I'm going to get knocked out while I try to get that stuff out. Even if I were justified in using it, it's not going to be accessible to me. So I don't want to back up in a straight line. Robert's also getting stronger with each punch. And notice as he throws his shot, it's lengthening, no problem. I'm actually getting into that knockout range. So I want to resist that. The other thing we talked about is space being the front of Nasser or the defender. If I want an angle on Robert, and I step to an angle all the way out here, all he does is turn his hips and spine. He doesn't even have to turn them. At this range, if I step here, he can still hit me. Whereas if we ended up being close to each other and I step, I'm creating a very harsh angle. Let's do that again, Robert, and have you face the camera. So Robert's facing the camera, and I step here, I'm ending up at a very hard angle where Robert would have a hard time accessing or hurting me. But if we have this much distance and I step, Robert's still throwing that shot and still hitting me. So when we talk about using distance as a control mechanism fundamentally against an empty hand attack, we need to be certain how we are creating that distance and where we are going and how we are managing it. Managing distance in an empty hand encounter by going backwards is almost always a bad idea. And it's going to be super tough to create your angles and super tough to create a position of advantage if you're backing up. All right, guys, you're going to see I switched. I put on some little gloves. This is another training accessory. There's many things you can use in your training. Right now, what we're going to focus on is controlling that distance, working on that core principle that we want to control the distance. But at this point, we're going to stay close and we're going to create the angle, which is our other C for punch defense. I put on the small gloves because once I'm close to my adversary, I'm going to create that angle and I'm going to try to stay at that angle for purposes of this training block. If I want to create an angle and maintain that same angle, what I like to do, and conceptually what I like to do, is when I create an angle, which means my hips will face my opponent's hips, his hips face away, I'm going to maintain that angle by attaching to an arm with either an overhook or an underhook, whizzer or whatever you want to call it from your background. I'm going to go over that arm or under it, and I'm also going to try to control their head. I'm going to control their head by either walling it off with my forearm. You're going to see me create frames, or I'm going to get inside head position, which will also allow me to control my opponent's head. One of the reasons we control the head, especially when we create angles, is where his head goes, his body goes. Unless he's having a bad day, then they go opposite. But as long as he's having a good day, they stay together. Since where his head goes, his body goes, I'm going to wall his head off, which will make it challenging for him to fix the angle. So I'm going to bring Robert out to demo this. Remember, as he punches me, I'm covering, I'm controlling distance, I'm going forward. One of the things that will make it hard for you to create angles and control him is if you chase punches. We went over this in the beginning. Robert throws a rounded punch and I come here, because now I've got all that space. Now it's going to be hard for me to create an angle and maintain it. I don't want that space. I want to eat that up. We talked about this in the segment just before this. So as Robert punches me, I'm actually going to go forward. And now we don't have any space in between us. My button that gets pushed, if you will, that tells me in my mind it's time to create an angle is when I make contact with Robert, and now I'm creating an angle, and I'm creating a situation where my hip space, Robert, his hip space away from me. In this situation, I'm under the arm, and I'm on Robert's head with a hand. I could also have a frame here if Robert was closer to me, here. I could also have inside hand position, and I'm trying to control the forearm. All those are good situations for me where I've got my hips facing Robert, his hips facing away. Anytime I want to move, I can move behind Robert at that angle and move to the other side. For right now, we're going to stay at that same side. If Robert faces the camera, I've got my back to it, he punches at me, or we're kind of at an angle here. I'm moving, and I'm here. Another thing you'll see that's different when we teach punch defense and distance management is that core concept of mobility. What C4C and PFC has found over the years of teaching this principle is guys who stand still struggle with this because that distance never changes. So once the fight starts, I'm going forward, boom, I'm changing that, and I'm creating that angle. Okay? So I'm creating that angle. Because I'm short, I often end up underneath my adversary in that underhook. Taller guys, a lot of guys when they go with me, they may end up going over that punch, or they'll come here and they'll wrap that arm, and they'll get that overhook. Okay? So Robert turns this way for me. This is an overhook. This is an underhook. I'm under or I'm over. But nothing changes on his head. I want to just prevent, if I have my head straight up in the air and I don't wall his head off, he just turns into me. And now he could create an angle. When I'm here, he can still get into me, but he's going to have to move that hand. And that gives me time. That gives me the ability to respond to that. So when we control that distance in an empty hand, outcome-based scenario, if I decide I'm going to stay attached to Robert, I've got to control the distance and I've got to create angles. Once I get to that angle, I need to maintain those. One way that we could train that, we're going to show you, even though I have little gloves and Robert has big gloves, you could train this with big gloves as well. So what we're going to do right now is we're just going to go back and forth. One person will come forward with punches. Now, it's important when we train this that the bad guy, when he throws punches, doesn't throw a punch and back away from it and maintain distance. Because if he does that and I really want distance and he backs up, I could maybe make a lot more distance. And now maybe I can exit the problem and get away from him. In this scenario, he's going to press forward. He can throw more than one punch if he wants, but he's going to press forward. And I'm either going to end up at a good angle with control of the arm, or I'm going to go all the way to his back. And you're going to see that. Robert will go. I will create an angle. I will maintain that angle by staying attached or wrapping Robert up, either through an arm and head control or on his back through holding on to him. And then we'll switch roles. And Robert will do the same thing back to me. And we're just going to go one for one. And this would be a way to drill this concept that I'm showing you right now. So Robert goes, boom, I'm here. I'm creating that angle. I'm walling him off right here. And I've got that good angle. I'm going to turn him loose. We just switched roles. I'm the bad guy. He's the good guy. He's going to show you in big gloves how he can do the exact same thing. There he is. On that angle. Boom. He's ready. Good. When he's finished with me, he'll get rid of me. And now we reset.